Okay, this is a video about the cost of capital. And everybody wants to avoid computing the cost of capital, understandably, because you come up with such crazy numbers and you get different numbers, and certainly the CAPM doesn't work, and the alternatives are much better, it seems. I happen to believe that. I was like that. I wanted to get around that. I testified on the cost of capital. I shouldn't admit this for the first time in 1979 as a young kid. Don't worry, I was young. Now, Jimmy Carter was president of the U.S. then, I think. The I since that time I've come up with different beliefs about the cost of capital. I used to believe that, CAPM was good and all that stuff. Now, this file in another video, I've shown you how you can take a file and make a macro to download all this data. So this was my attempt to get some, I don't know, kind of a diverse group of companies that are a little bit in the renewable business, some not so much, but just to get a sample of companies. Now, the method that I want to talk to you about in this video is this method where we take either the price to book ratio and the return, or the EV to the invested capital, the enterprise value to the invested capital, and compare that to the return on invested capital, all of which can be downloaded. Now, this method is debatable. I've lost, I should admit, when I've tried to testify on this, but I believe in this method as a rough kind of way to do this. The problem, it's founded on the basic idea that if the return on equity is equal to the cost of equity, then the market to book ratio, the price to book ratio, should be 1. So if we look at this Ibradola, they have a price to book ratio of 1, suggesting that the cost of equity capital should be 6.41. Now we can look at this company, and they're way down. It didn't work for this company. This company here, which is supposed to be the subsidiary of Warren Buffett's company or something like that, that has a market to book ratio of less than 1 and a lower ROE. And this one has a higher one, so this isn't working perfectly. We'll look at a different file later, maybe. Now, I'm going to also show you some just techniques here, and I'm going to fix this, because what I want to do is insert and exclude some companies, and I want to include a forcing the regression equation to 0. Now, let me tell you about the regression equation. If we put ROE on the y-axis, market to book on the x-axis, then we can make a scatter plot. I'll show you how to make a scatter plot. You just select this area, press the alternate F1 to make a scatter plot, add a trend line, and then you generally get a pretty good R squared on this. In fact, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to close this file for a minute, and I'm going to open a file that has just utility companies, because the utility companies are a little bit better to use. Now, you can see, I hope, where you can find some of this data. I hope it wasn't angry with me. This summarizes the different cost of capital techniques. So let's take the utility companies. Now this should say cost of capital from value driver. Now, if I was a kid, they would put me on this, in US, they would put me on this thing called Ritalin. Bastards. Uh, uh, because I skip around too much. I'm sorry about doing that in the videos. Now I'm back to this thing, and we have kind of two different uh, 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 tables here. I was hoping we get an R squared of 93% when we put it not through the origin, put it through the origin only 81%, and you get this kind of thing. We can then, but we might want to exclude this last data point because this is way up here, you know, and then we might want to see that. So here's how so far we do it, but there's a problem. What I want to do is show you how to modify this. I'm going to modify this so we can include and exclude different companies, and then we can show you what happens to this key relationship between ROE and market to book ratio, and compute the cost of equity using different techniques and have it all automated. So the first thing let's do, why don't we do this? First, I'm going to open our generic macros wherever I can find that. Apparently I haven't opened it recently enough. Okay, and then Shift Control T, Shift Control F, just to show it's an obvious thing now. Hold on for just a minute. Okay, I just put a true here I just made an adjustment. So in our base data, if you don't have a forward ROE, which is much better to take than the trailing 12 months ROE when you do this sort of analysis, then you can go back and look at the trailing ROE. So for this AGL resources, I just went back and used the prior one. Okay, now if we, so what happens now if I have now, instead of, I guess I have it right, I have 13, but there are 14 pieces of data. So what I want to do is make this really flexible. So let's say I want to right now include another one. So this, when I showed it last time, would be kind of manual like this. Now I don't want to make it manual. So why don't we do a couple of things? We'll just put if error around this. Now, if you use the if error, I just want to say one thing. Using the false is always, for me, kind of the best way to do things. Okay. With one exception, I think. There's going to be an exception, of course. Okay, I'm going to use the if error on the match too. But when I use the if error on the match, I think I'm going to put a NA. If I put false, it just tries to find a 0. It just tries to match with 0. So now we have a kind of long sample, and everything's okay. But now let's say this one with a market price to book ratio of 4. Where is that one? Come on, it's not this 3.92. This is the top one, and this is kind of not really a utility. It's a transmission company. So then we get a different, now we get the false here, and we get some other data. So let's put that as true and recalculate that. We get kind of a higher return. Now we also get, when we do the zero intercept method, we get a number of 5.54 instead. Now we also might want to take another one out. Let's say I don't know, this one. This one, wasn't there one that was really low? No, that was in the other sample. Okay, I don't know. These all look pretty good. Let's just experiment though. I don't know. Let's take this one out and this one out. Okay, because they're kind of high. and then we have a couple more falses, and we get a little bit of a different estimate. It's still pretty rigorous, actually. There's two. Okay, it's really embarrassing, but I had to change my approach. What we're going to do is make a flexible range name, and I'm going to make the to do this. Let's press Control F3. Control F3. Come on, and make a new range name. And in this one, let's call the first one the PB ratio. And let's put an offset function and start with the first one. Then you go 0, 0, and then we'll make it a length of 10, F4, which is the maximum number of rows. I didn't have to do that. And a width of 1. And then we'll make another new range name and call that ROE, and put that, whoops, use the offset function, and put this here, and put a comma, 0, 0, 10, 1, and press OK, and close that. And then what we can do now is when we do this intercept, we'll do the knowns y's, which is the PB ratio, and we'll just do that against the known x's, which is the ROE. Oops. Okay. And okay, I hate that offset thing sometimes. Somehow I must have put the wrong number in. So let's do this again with the slope, and then we put the known y's, and this should have been ROE. That's the price to book ratio. Okay, and then we put there we get our cost of capital in. So let's put a couple of trues here, and then recalculate it. Now, when we recalculate it here, when we use the select data, what we should be using is on the, let's make sure I get this right, the x-axis is the price to book ratio, so we put the PB ratio, and y is the ROE. Okay. And now it gives the whole thing. Okay, and we can also, of course, add the trend lines. And let's add a trend line where we don't set the internet set to 0 first. And we get that one, which is the same thing here. And now to get a 0 intercept, unfortunately, we can't use the slope or the intercept function. So let's put this back to true. Let's get a more extreme one. Put this one back to true, so we got everyone back. All right, now, so we can see what happens to the ROE if we change all the numbers around. And now, if you want to make a 0 intercept automatically here, unfortunately, you have to kind of put a few numbers here and put LINEST, and we put the known y's, which is the ROE, and the known x's, which is the P to B ratio. And then we put false in for the constant, and then we put true to get some additional regression statistics, and then I press enter. I should have pressed shift control enter. F2, whoops. F2, shift control enter. Even one more down. F2, shift control enter. Here we get, so now let's make this another trend line here and make this one go through the origin, set it to 0, display the equation on the chart. So we have 2, and on this one let's kind of put it down here maybe because it's kind of by the origin. And we have the 5, 4, 1. It gives us a different r squared, which is all very nice. Why, I don't know. And this must be the standard error. Okay, if we just would do this the other way, by the way, if you would put here a true, then it would give us the 4.09 and the 3.02. These are the standard errors, the regression. There's the r squared. So don't ask me why the r squared on the graph and this one is different, this 9.8, I don't know. So our zero intercept is going to be just from this number, and then we can get our cost of capital. So of course it's a big difference and a problem, but that's at least the mechanics. And now we've got a kind of much more flexible approach, and what we really had to do is use the offset function to get there. Okay, I am a little upset that we didn't get exactly the same number, but not that upset. Let's do this. Let's do it without this one, and maybe that's a more representative, maybe not. Okay, and I think that's enough of this video. This should say price to book and ROE approach. I can see I'm going to get some thumbs down as if I give a shit about that, but because the methods, if it doesn't go through the intercept, aren't really right. This is, I think, by far the best approach, because if you have zero earnings, you better have zero market value. And I think that's kind of the approach, and we just didn't have enough variation in that one. Okay, that's enough of that video.